By the morning after the Golden Globes, every network in America was running the same clip. Not a clip of a winner, not a clip of a red carpet moment, an acceptance speech, or a film tribute. A clip of a woman standing at a Lifetime Achievement Award microphone who had not mentioned a single name in 6 minutes and had made the most watched political statement of the night without once using the word politics. The clip ran on CNN, it ran on MSNBC, it ran on ABC, NBC, and CBS. Fox News ran it, and then ran Trump's response, and then ran the clip again. By noon on January 9, 2017, the 6-minute speech had been viewed more times online than any Golden Globes acceptance speech in the history of the broadcast. Not because Meryl Streep had said something that had never been said before. Because she had said something that had been said many times before, in op-eds, in panel discussions, in political speeches, in protest signs, and had said it in a register that none of those formats could access. The register of a woman accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award for the performance of human complexity who turned the microphone toward a single documented moment and said in the flat, precise, completely unperformed voice of someone describing something she cannot get out of her head, "It wasn't in a movie, it was real life." That sentence is the one sentence, not the disrespect invites disrespect sentence, though that sentence is in the record and carries its own weight. Not when the powerful use their position to bully others, we all lose, though that sentence ran on banners and signs for the following 4 years. The one sentence, the sentence that made the room stand up before she had finished delivering it, that landed in the Beverly Hilton ballroom with the specific, irreplaceable weight of something true being said by someone who has spent a career distinguishing the performed version of truth from the actual version, is the sentence about the movie. It wasn't in a movie, it was real life. This is the story of why those 8 words, delivered in the flat, wry, forensic register of a woman who has inhabited more documented human realities on screen than any other actress of her generation, constituted the single most efficient political statement made at an awards ceremony in the decade between 2015 and 2026, and what Trump's documented response to those 8 words reveals about the specific, measurable distance between a performance and the thing the performance is trying to replicate. The timeline starts not in January 2017, but in August 2015, at a campaign rally in South Carolina, where Trump stood at a microphone and did something with his body and his voice that every person in the room and everyone watching on television immediately recognized as an imitation of New York Times reporter Sergei Kovaleski, a journalist with a congenital joint condition called arthrogryposis that affects the movement of his arms. Trump flailed his arms. He adopted a hunched posture. He said, "You ought to see this guy." He said it in the specific performance of contempt register of someone who is using a physical difference as a comedic instrument, who is pointing at a body and saying, "Look at this. Isn't this funny? Isn't this worth mocking in front of a crowd?" The crowd laughed. The cameras caught it. The clip ran. Trump said he had never mocked Kovaleski's disability. He said it immediately, to reporters, on Twitter, in the specific flat confidence of a man who has decided the claim is operative regardless of the footage. He said he was merely doing an impression of a nervous, groveling reporter. He said he didn't even know what Kovaleski looked like. He said this about a reporter he had personally cited by name in 2001, a reporter who had covered him directly, a reporter whose byline Trump had referenced in a documented interview. A factual sequence available in the archives of any news organization that had been publishing since 2001. The claim was made, the footage existed, the archived interview existed. The specific distance between the claim and the footage is the first documented unit of the performance gap that Meryl Streep would name 16 months later from a Lifetime Achievement Award microphone. She did not name it immediately. She was not, in 2015, the person who stepped forward to address it. The clip ran. The analysts analyzed. The campaign continued. Kovaleski said in interviews that the imitation was unmistakably directed at his condition, that anyone who had seen him use his arms would recognize the specific mimicry. Trump continued to deny it. The specific, flat confidence of the denial sat in the record beside the specific, documented footage of the imitation, and the distance between them accumulated for 16 months without a name that had the weight to make it land. January 8, 2017. The Beverly Hilton. Meryl Streep was accepting the Cecil B. DeMille Lifetime Achievement Award, the specific award, from the specific institution of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, given to the specific person whose body of work is considered most representative of the art of performance across a career. She had 3 Academy Awards. She had been nominated 32 times across her career by various institutions. She had inhabited, on screen, Margaret Thatcher, Julia Child, Sophie Zawistowski, Karen Silkwood, Miranda Priestley, the complete range of documented human experience, from the transcendent to the monstrous, rendered with the specific, craft-bearing precision of someone who has spent 50 years understanding what it means to perform a human reality in a way that is recognizable as real. She stood at the microphone. She said, "There was one performance this year that stunned me." She said it in the flat voice of a critic, not the performed enthusiasm of an awards presenter, not the warm collegial register of a peer acknowledging a colleague's work, but the flat, specific, forensic voice of someone reading a finding. She said, "It sank its hooks in my heart." She said, "Not because it was good, there was nothing good about it." She said, "It was the moment when the person asking to sit in the most respected seat in our country imitated a disabled reporter, someone he outranked in privilege, power, and the capacity to fight back." She had not named Trump, she had described the performance. And the description, the specific forensic language of a woman who has spent 50 years learning to distinguish a genuine performance from a performed performance, who has developed the critical vocabulary for identifying the difference between an actor inhabiting a human reality and a performer using a human reality as a prop, landed in the Beverly Hilton ballroom with the weight of a professional finding delivered by the person most professionally qualified to deliver it. The room stood up. Not all at once. Rooms don't stand all at once. They stand the way water rises, from the people closest to the thing being said outward. And the Beverly Hilton stood from the center of the room outward in the specific, visible, documented way of people who have been given the word for something they have been watching for 16 months and who recognize, in the giving of it, that the word is exactly right. She said, "It kind of broke my heart when I saw it." She said, "I still can't get it out of my head." She said it in the specific register of someone who is not performing the wound, who is describing an actual, documented experience of watching a thing and finding that the thing has lodged in a place where it cannot be managed, cannot be professionally processed, cannot be filed in the category of things that are bad but containable. She said it in the voice of someone for whom the imitation was not a political event, but a human one, a moment in which the specific documented cruelty of using a person's physical difference as a comedic instrument had arrived at her in the flat, unmanaged, completely real register of something that happens not in a movie but in real life. And then she said, it wasn't in a movie, it was real life. 8 words, delivered in the flat, wry, forensic voice of someone who has spent 50 years knowing the difference, who can identify the performed version of an emotion from 50 yards and has developed, through the specific, documented work of inhabiting human realities on screen, the precise vocabulary for naming the distance between performance and the thing performance is trying to replicate. She named it in 8 words. She placed the documented footage, the flailing arms, the hunched posture, the "you ought to see this guy," in the specific category where it belonged. Not a performance, not an impression, not a nervous, groveling reporter imitation, but a real act performed on a real person who had a real condition and no capacity to fight back against the real man who outranked him in every available measure of power. The room was on its feet. The applause ran for 45 seconds before she continued. She said, "Disrespect invites disrespect," she said. "Violence incites violence." She said it in the flat, even, escalation-free register of someone stating a causal law. Not a warning, not a plea, but a finding. The specific, documented causal relationship between the performance of contempt toward the powerless and the culture that the performance produces. She said, "And when the powerful use their position to bully others, we all lose." She said it without a name, without the performative escalation of someone who is enjoying the confrontation. In the flat, unhurried, completely professional register of a woman who has been doing this for 50 years and has found, in the specific, documented gap between a campaign trail imitation and the real-life person it imitated, the single subject worthy of a lifetime achievement microphone. Trump had not watched the speech. He said so to the New York Times in a phone call placed Sunday night, while the ballroom was still applauding, in the specific preemptive register of a man who has decided the claim of not watching is more useful than the claim of watching and disagreeing. He said he was not surprised. He said Hollywood liberals always do this. He said he was not going to respond. By Monday morning, he had posted 3 times. He called her one of the most overrated actresses in Hollywood. He called her a Hillary flunky. He said she lost big. He said she gave a very poor performance. He said her speech was not accurately delivered. He defended himself again against the disability imitation claim, saying he had never done such a thing and that he was merely groveling, doing a groveling reporter impression, that the impression had nothing to do with Kowalewski's condition. He did not address the 8 words. He did not address that it wasn't in a movie. It was real life. He did not address the disrespect, which invites disrespect, causal law. He did not address the most respected seat in our country's framework. He did not address the person he outranked in terms of privilege, power, and the capacity to fight back. He called the actress overrated and said her speech was not accurately delivered, and left the 8 words standing in the Beverly Hilton record, in the applause record, in the 45-second standing ovation record, without a single word directed at a single syllable of what the words actually said. The performance gap is the story. Trump's documented claim, "I never mocked Kowalewski. I was doing a groveling reporter impression. I didn't even know what he looked like," is a performance. It is an attempt to place a different narrative over the documented footage, to offer a verbal description of the imitation that contradicts what the visual record shows, to assert that the thing the camera caught is not the thing the camera caught. It is, in the specific, professional vocabulary of the woman who named it from the Lifetime Achievement microphone, a performance, and a performance that she, more than any other person who spoke about the imitation in the 16 months between August 2015 and January 2017, was professionally qualified to identify as such. She named it without naming him. She placed it in the category of real life without performing the outrage that the category warranted. She said it broke her heart, and she still couldn't get it out of her head, in the specific, flat, unmanaged register of someone for whom the emotional response was not a choice. Not a performed empathy deployed for an awards audience, but the actual, documented, uncontainable response of a person who has spent 50 years inhabiting human vulnerabilities on screen and who recognized, in the footage of the imitation, the specific cruelty of using a human vulnerability as a prop. The confirmation is in the comparison Trump could not make. He called her overrated. 3 Academy Awards, 32 nominations, 50 years of documented work. He said her speech was not accurately delivered, about a woman whose professional identity is built on the precise documented craft of delivering the thing accurately. He said she was a Hillary flunky who lost big, about a woman who had not run for anything, who had no partisan record, who had spent 50 years being professionally celebrated by the same institution that had just given her its Lifetime Achievement Award. He called the performance overrated. He could not call it wrong. He could not address the 8 words. He could not produce a counter-narrative, for it wasn't in a movie, it was real life. Because the counter-narrative requires engaging the footage, and engaging the footage requires engaging the gap between the claim and the camera. And the gap between the claim and the camera is the one place in the entire documented record where the performance cannot be sustained. She knew it. She has always known it. She said it in 8 words, from a Lifetime Achievement microphone to a room that stood up before she finished, in the specific, flat, forensic, 50 years qualified register of a woman who has spent her entire professional life learning to tell the difference between what is performed and what is real, and who, on January 8, 2017, in the Beverly Hilton ballroom, found the subject most worthy of that distinction and delivered the finding in the most efficient form available to her. It wasn't in a movie. It was real life. Like and subscribe. Turn on every notification, because the next performance is already in progress, and this channel will be here to name the gap.